Cool. All right. Great. I don't know if it's working as usual, but I'll just make sure real quick. And then we can, yeah, it's live. It's live and it's rolling. And and people are even talking. All right, great, cool. How's it going, everyone? If this stops working or if something goes terribly wrong or whatever, just let me know in the thing. And great. So Hacksaw Ridge, I watched it today, and I had a fun time watching that movie. It's a sad one, and I knew the story of Hacksaw Ridge before, like of the guy. What's his name? Great. Hacksaw Ridge. Let's look at the guy's name. Someone might tell me. Desmond Doss. Cool. So I just wanted to come on here and yeah, great, Desmond Doss. I wanted to come on here and talk about it a little bit because it's one of those movies where I don't know exactly how I feel about it entirely. I mean, it's well made. It's a well made movie, and acting was phenomenal. It was pretty bloody, and but I didn't. That's fine. I'm not like, oh my gosh, it was bloody. I can't live with that. I can't handle it. But what's interesting about it is I want to ask to you guys, what's the difference? And I kind of have an answer already, but I'm pretty harsh on God's Not Dead 2 and God's Not Dead 1. I don't know if you guys realize that, but I am. So what's the difference between the star of God's Not Dead 2 joining in being a government employee working for a government agency called the educational system, and having certain beliefs and getting in trouble for those beliefs, and then going to court and having to deal with that, and I was very critical of that. I was like, well, look, get over yourself. It's your employer. Do what you're told, or quit. What's the difference between that and Desmond doing a very similar thing? Why do I walk away from that movie saying that guy's a hero? And why do I walk away from God's Not Dead 2 and say she's a bad word? It's probably because she's a woman. That's a joke. What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments below. Let me know in the chat. Oh, one was made by PureFlix. But, yeah, it was. But I liked the, I didn't mind Case for Christ. And that also was at least distributed by PureFlix. So, in Hacksaw Ridge, those who oppose him aren't shown to be unreasonable straw men, unlike God's Not Dead 2. That's very true. That's kind of what popped in my head, is that, like, what the people are like who are around Desmond in that movie are very like reasonable people. And at one point during the movie, I was upset at him. And as somebody who tends to lean very pacifist and I'm not a huge fan of war, I was still ticked off at him at some point in the movie, like intentionally. Like the movie wanted me to be a little bit upset at him and conflicted. There was never a moment in God's Not Dead 2 where I was conflicted, like maybe she did do the right thing, maybe these people, I was like, man, this movie is really trying to tell me not to like these people and to like those people. Someone also said that he was actually a real person. Yeah, and it was executed much better. That is another thing. Like there was a part where, like in Hacksaw Ridge, they're sitting there in the foxhole and they're just talking, and what's happening there is this guy who used to really was the hardest on Desmond. They were making up. They were having small talk, something that they wouldn't have done before, and that was like, it was slow and it was well paced, and it wasn't like, all right, now we got to tell you what to believe right now. And at that moment when I was like, this is a good movie compared to most Christian movies that I see where it's like, this is not paced well. This is just every moment in this is trying to push an agenda. The movie was allowed to breathe, and what was happening gave the audience time to think about what was happening and to contemplate what they felt about it. There was also like real moments where he was like, where he was questioning, like, am I doing the right thing? Is this dumb? God, what am I doing here? So it really kind of showed the way war was. And because to me, my thought is, kind of as this kind of showed two lines that I have in my life. One is like, legalists get on my nerves. Like, I don't want to be a legalist. And so there are moments where I'm like, this guy, what a legalist. But then also, the other line is just kind of the idea that, I do have principles and I want to stand on those principles. And so to me, I'm like, well, if you're a pacifist, why are you joining the military? Initially, I was thinking that. And they handle that well, where he's able to explain himself at one point in the movie why he joined. And my friend Josh has this term that he made up recently called ideal adjacent. An ideal adjacent world where it's like, if in your ideal world everything there would be all peace, there would be all everybody would be happy and get along. But we don't live in that world. We live in a bad world where people do bad things. So in an ideal adjacent world, so it's the ideal given the fact that people will do bad things. What is another ideal thing to think about? And so the joke was like, well, ideally children who are left without parents would be able to get adopted, and it's like, well, ideally children wouldn't be left without parents. So this idea of an ideal adjacent world, and it made me think, like, ideally, I wouldn't go to war. I wouldn't join in the military or anything like that. But then just thinking about what is the alternative, and he kind of gives a rundown of why he joined the military, and I was like, he was like, this is because in this world where people will go to war, like, he can't stop it. He can't stop it from happening, but he can do something to help. And he did do something to help. If you watch the movie, and I don't want to spoil all of it, but he did help, and he was heroic in the film. Someone commented that Mel Gibson, regardless of what he's done in his personal life, his movies are pretty good, and this movie especially. They do in God's Not Dead paint the bad guys to be the bad guys. The other thing that got me with this movie was that he he was under the impression when he joined that there was nothing wrong with him joining up and becoming a medic. So there was no there was no reason for him to. He wasn't going in like, I'm gonna change the way things are. He joined in with the impression that what he was doing wasn't wrong. And whether he was ignorant to the way things were or whatever, but obviously, like, it was proven in the movie that actually, no, you were allowed to have those convictions, and that the government and the United States was going to recognize those convictions as a conscientious objector. And so that's another difference between God's Not Dead. If he was told, no, you must do this, like when he signed in, when he enlisted, then great. Then that's his problem for joining in. The other thing is that I think was interesting, but before I get into that, Hui Freeman, you told me to read your comment, so I'm going to scroll back. I'm sorry I pronounced your name like an idiot. I almost cried when I watched it. Is that the comment you were talking about? Because I did cry. I was all by myself. Oh, Desmond was doing a very risky thing that could cause him to lose his life, so I believe that it was more inspiring and phenomenal feat. Yeah. The other thing about this movie is that I don't think he was ever really asking people to cut him any slack, other than saying, I don't want to handle a gun. And he did say, I don't want to work on the Sabbath, but I think he let that go. He still went through the training. He didn't say, like, well, you guys are making me do all the hard stuff just because I'm a Christian. Like, he recognized that by taking that stand, he was going to face hardships, and he could have quit and walked away, and he didn't, but he also didn't ask for special treatment in doing that. And I think that that's really the main thing that sticks out to me, and what I kind of think about is that here he is he was awarded a medal for going above and beyond, and he did go above and beyond. And I think that that's there's such a lesson there in this for there's such a lesson in this for, like, people who make Christian content, I think. Because, so, outside of what this guy did and how it compares to God's Not Dead, even though this is part of it, like, how it compares to the filmmaking process for Christians is that Christians will make substandard films and then kind of in their actions ask for my wife's calling right now. She doesn't realize I'm on a stream. They'll ask for forgiveness. I'll have her remind me later. They'll ask for forgiveness and leeway and to not be judged at the same standard because it's a Christian movie. It's Christian. And that's something I so firmly disagree with. I think that's wrong, and I think this movie kind of shows an example not only of a movie being made well and having a faith base, but a character who, even though he's Christian, recognizes that he doesn't get any special treatment, and in fact is held up to a higher standard because he's asking for this particular type of exception. And I think that that's what really inspired me about the movie, and I was like, that's amazing that everybody had kind of done their duty, and he had done his duty, and duty, that's what I'm laughing about right now. He had done his duty and was told he could go home, and he kept doing his duty. All right, he kept on doing more than what he was asked for, and he was risking his life for other people, and he wasn't like, well, because I'm a Christian, that's the reason you're sending me into war, isn't it? He never asked for special treatment because of his faith. He said, look, if if I ask for the special treatment, I understand that it's gonna bring consequences, but watch what I can do. I will prove to you that I'm an asset. I will prove to you that I can do this. Please trust me, and I will prove to you, because there's more at stake for me. And by being an example, by being a shining city on the hill, on the ridge, he changed people's lives. And he had real world consequences, like real world help, that whether you're a Christian or not, you can recognize that what he did was an admirable thing. And that's something that I think sometimes Christians don't do. Like they will do something that they'll just be Christian and expect people to see that as some sort of inherent good, instead of like what they do. Like of course your faith is important to you, but it's not important to other people. What comes out of that is important to other people, and not. That's when people will see that you're different. All right, so you asked. I'm gonna read through some comments now. Those are my thoughts right now, just having seen it. I tried to do the best. He tried to do the best he could. He could have just said he was a Christian, but he helped in any way he could. And that exactly, the Titanium Panther. That's what I'm thinking. Like, that's a great comment, and that's what goes through my head. Like that's probably the big difference. Where in God's Not Dead 2, she's like, I just said this little thing. Like she really plays the victim, and I feel like he doesn't play the victim at all. He just says, this is what I would like to do, and he fights for his ability to do that. But then he also is like, well, if I have to go to jail for this, I'm still not gonna, like, I don't think I did anything wrong because I was told this. I don't know. It's something worth thinking about. All right, I'm gonna read some more comments. I kind of miss Josh in God's Not Dead 2. It could have focused on him and some people who we didn't know. That's true. Maybe he could have said, man, you know what? I was kind of, it could have been God's Not Dead 2, senior year. Let's see. I came pretty close to tearing up in the movie, but honestly, I felt more emotional connection to the characters in Martin Scorsese's Silence. That's the movie I'm going to watch next. I've committed to this week watching those two movies because people are like, watch these movies. They're good Christian movies. Like, good movies that also have, like, Christian thematic elements. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll give it a try. To be honest, I don't agree with his decision to not fire a gun. Firing a gun is in killing anyone, first of all. Secondly, in the Bible, it says thou shalt not murder, not thou shalt not kill. And that's something that is brought up in the movie, and that's something that kind of, like, I think at that time, obviously it's, I think the movie covered that really well. And whether you agree with him and his, like, conviction or not, because I don't agree with never touching a gun. Like, I think guns are tools that can be used appropriately and inappropriately. And if you're defending yourself, and to a degree, he did put people's lives at risk because they had to, like, protect him also. So there's that. I think about that as well. But I'll take a movie that has a first week act like Hacksaw Ridge than a movie like God's Not Dead where everything is terrible. Yeah, that's very true. Very true. The difference is God's Not Dead characters were around to push an agenda. Desmond actually happened and signed up to be a doctor and made that clear, and the army agreed with him. Yeah, that's true. And I guess that's where I want to make sure when I'm doing reviews, I want to be fair. I don't want to, like, say, man, this is great, and then, like, this movie's stupid because it's made by Pureflix, and that be my reasoning. Like, this idea like that tactics aren't what's important. It's your targets. And I don't agree with that. I think it's important to be consistent, and I want to be consistent to my principles. And I think this movie did really benefit from being a true story. I think that even though there's a bit of an agenda in the movie, the agenda or the lesson of the movie is that you should stick by your convictions, and you should stand up for what you believe in, even if it's unpopular. But also recognize that when you do that, not everybody's gonna love you and worship you and praise you for doing that. I love the movie as an Adventist. We're a Christian group that is often forgotten. I found it interesting that while his faith was a factor, I liked that his was a thing of personal spirituality. That is very true. Faith did inspire him to be the way he was, but he didn't expect other people to act the way he acted. He wasn't there like, hey, I believe that this is my conviction about guns, and you need to stop doing that thing too. Like, he kept it personal, and I think that that's something that Christians often forget to do, is recognize that their convictions, while important, aren't everybody's. Not everybody feels the way you do. Not everybody's a Christian. Not everybody is an Adventist, Seventh-day Adventist. Even Kellogg, that's a good example. The guy who started Kellogg's originally was Adventist, but then he left the church because there's some weird stuff about that. Anyway, that's a bad example, I imagine. Let's see. Love the movie. Oh, no, wait. I read that one already. I will say I hate when movies rely on the based. Guys, you got to write things appropriately. Rely on the based on a true story trope. Put it in quotes for me. I can't read very well. Instead of actually creating a good story, I think that that this one does both, though ignoring the fact that it is based on a true story. Yeah. No, I think that so many Christian movies, there's one coming out soon, and it's like based on a true story, and it's like they all are. They all claim that. And I don't think it's bad to change a movie, even if it's based on a true story, to change it to, because life doesn't happen linearly. Like, there's a bunch of things happening all at once. Like in what was the movie that I said that I liked? In Case for Christ, there's two cases that he's on the case for two different things, one for Christ and one for like this murder or whatever. And that the real story of that happened years before he was on his case for Christ. And they made it seem in the movie like it happened like alongside each other. But I think that was better. Like a more incompetent director would have like done that and then gotten into the case for Christ stuff. And I think that would have made it a disconjointed film. And so I think the director of that movie, Case for Christ, did a good job at putting those together, because it was relevant to the guy's life, but it wasn't necessary to. It was fine to say it out of order. Great. All right, Cassie B. Yeah, if you guys really want your questions answered, then send me money. What are the best and worst Christian movies you have ever seen? I would say this is one of the best Christian movies I've ever seen. There's a movie called Warrior, which I know was promoted to Christians. That's a pretty good one. It's about MMA fighting, and it had a Tom Hardy in it. And it's not really Christian, but the dad, you can tell, has had like a spiritual like realization because he was an alcoholic and then he wasn't. And so it was promoted to Christians. And so if that was a Christian movie, it was a really well-made one. But they really watered down the gospel. Case for Christ was pretty good, even though the more I think about it, the more I think it'll be fine for me to review, and I'll reveal what all I think is crappy about that movie, even though the movie was well done. I'm excited because that director is directing God's Not Dead 3, if you can even believe it. And I've heard that he really wants to like make a good movie out of it, which I imagine. I think his last name's Dunn, or something. Gunn. His last name's Gunn. It's the director. Narnia's good. That's a good one. What are some bad ones? Most of them. I don't know. I don't know how to say which one's the worst. I mean, because there's so many that are bad for different reasons. Like there's some that are bad because they're horribly made, like low budget. Some are such big budgets and they're still horribly made. Some of them are just poorly written and squandered. Some of them are just pandering to Christians, you know. So like there's so much, like there's so many different reasons that they can be bad. Some of them are too preachy. Some of them are trying too hard. So I can't name them, but you can watch my videos and know which ones are the really bad ones, because they're the ones that I have reviewed. The murder case subplot was far more interesting in Case for Christ. That's true. And what's interesting about that is, you know, I was thinking, of course, like if you're going to tell a story about Lee Strobel, you're going to talk about how he wrote this book about Christianity, and you're going to talk about that murder case because it's so interesting. Like they had to put it in there, and I think they tied it in well. There were some things about it that were kind of stupid, but I'll get into that when I review the movie. So I'm interested to see what Case for Christ is really going to be like. You know, excuse me. Ooh, too much water. No, sorry. I'm interested to see what God's Not Dead 3 is really going to be like. I still can't get over that we're getting a God's Not Dead 3. Like, we seriously need 3 movies to prove he exists? And they didn't even prove he exists. I mean, because you can't. Let's be honest. And that's why I do think that faith is such a personal thing, because you can't explain through physics that God exists if someone decides that everything physical is all that exists. I'm sorry. You can't. So that's why I get so upset about people getting mad at atheists for just not believing. And I think also part of that is just a bad definition of atheists. Like most atheists that I know, their definition is somebody who hasn't been proven that God exists. So by default, they're atheists. Now, if an atheist says, no, that's not the definition, Kevin, I see so many Christians trying to say, well, look, you can't prove God doesn't exist, and they use the God of the gaps argument, and I feel like that. I'm just saying, like, as a Christian, it's just a bad approach, because you're in your mind making atheists out to be the worst type of person, and then you're arguing that person. It's kind of the definition of straw manning. It would be better to get to know what they really believe and then kind of move from there. Using reverse psychology to win an argument is in those movies is the stupidest way to try and prove God exists. Yeah, exactly. But I wish they would differentiate more, because that would help audiences tell how true it is. I love based on a true story movies when the story is genuinely unique, a unique story that's never been told, like the real story that inspired Nacho Libre, or How Do Fools Fall in Love. Is there a real story that inspired Nacho Libre? That's awesome. That kind of reminds me of, oh man, I feel like Oh, I just watched a movie. It was weird. It had Zach Galifianakis, and it was about like them robbing a bank or something. That was a weird movie. I forget what it was called. The Perfect Crime or something like that. Do you plan on reviewing the Christiano brothers movie? I know people who review them before he strikes before people who reviewed them before had strikes in the past. I've heard that. Nacho Libre is one of my favorite Christian movies, by the way. I tell people that all the time, and they're like, "What? That's a Christian movie?" I'm like, "What? It's here's a guy who believes so heavily in his faith. What a strong believer he is. And there's these people in the church who are trying to tell him that he's wrong, but he does what's right in the face of people telling him he's wrong. Wow, it's a powerful film. You know, it's the best. Its arms are the best. Do you ever watch other people's reviews of God's Not Dead, like Ralph the Movie Maker and the Bible Reloaded? I haven't actually. Let me look up Ralph the Movie Maker because people have recommended. I don't ever watch them before I review it because I'm so scared. Masterminds, that was the movie. Good one. Yeah, it was okay. It wasn't great. It wasn't Christian. So, Ralph the Movie Maker. Let me see if I've watched his stuff. I watch them sometimes after I've reviewed the movie. Oh yeah, I've seen his stuff before. Yeah. After I watch the movie and write up everything, then I'll sometimes watch somebody else's, just so that, because I want plausible deniability. You know, I don't want their ideas to influence me, and I don't want to avoid saying something just because they said it. Those guys are bigger than my channel, and he has a review of it on his channel. Oh, of The Shack. Yeah. Those guys are bigger than my channel, and they come out with stuff like so quickly, and I usually take a little bit longer, I guess, to put my stuff out, and I don't want to copy or avoid copying. So I'll do my review and put it out, and then I'll sometimes watch their reviews, and it's a weird feeling to watch somebody else's review because you're like, oh man, I didn't say that. I should have said something about that. But then when they say something you said, you don't feel any better because you're like, oh man, they thought of it first. They said it too. Now I look like I'm copying. So it's a catch-22 watching somebody else's review. But I genuinely enjoy watching other reviews too. So I usually will watch those guys when they review other stuff, and not necessarily the stuff that I've reviewed. I think it bugs me so much because all stories are inspired by true events. I know. I think about that, like inspired by a true story. It's like, what? Well, of course, like a space drama is inspired by something. It's not all in a fake language and yeah. No, it always makes me laugh when it's like inspired by a true event. And it's like, what, like a sunset or something? Oh, yeah, the sun is in this movie. I guess it was inspired by that. All right. Yes, there was. The only movie reviewer I ever watch is Beyond the Trailer. She does a great job. I used to watch her a lot more. I didn't stop watching for any reason other than I don't know. I started watching other stuff, and but yeah, she does a great job. She has great thoughts and opinions. I think I mainly watched her because I disagreed with her so much, and I like to, have those other thoughts coming at me, and then I stopped because I was like, you know what? I feel better in my echo chamber. Well, I don't know if I'll watch Star Trek Discovery because I don't have. You have to pay or something to watch it, right? I'll watch it when it comes to Netflix. Okay. Do you think Christians have to make Christian movies? No, I don't. That's probably like. I'm not like, well, welcome to my Christian YouTube channel or my, hey, it's family friendly Felix. It's family friendly Kevin. Wow, welcome to the I never say anything bad here. I know C.S. Lewis is famous for having said, like, we don't need more Christian books or more Christian authors. We need Christians who write books. And I think that's I think that's something important to keep in mind. Like, I don't see a reason to be like, it's Christian. Like, that's why I make fun of that so much. Like, I just think if you're a Christian, then make your movie and just make your movie. I think people, there's people, they're called to do different things. Some people, they're pastors. And they're called to do that, and they want to do that, and that's great. For some people, so not everybody can be a critical jerk on the internet like I am, And so I can't sit here and act like, well, that's the only way to be. So it's fine if people feel like that they want to make, like the Kendrick brothers make movies for Christians, And maybe a lot of people are moved and touched by that. So great. But sometimes I'm called to call them out on that. Your top 5 favorite film directors from Josh Randall. Randall? I'll just say Randall. I would say, let's say J.J. Abrams, Martin Scorsese, Ben Affleck, because I like all the movies, but I haven't seen that new one that he did that people said wasn't so great. I'm sure there's others that, like, I'm not. This is in no particular order. These are just ones that I know I really like as I think of them. Tarantino, of course, and I've got to do one more because you paid me to do 5. The guys who did Nacho Libre. There we go. Because they also did. Someone asked about that Christian. What was the quote? They did. I'll finish my sentence. I'm not real good at finishing sentences. Sorry, guys. The quote is from C.S. Lewis. The director of Nacho Libre also directed Napoleon Dynamite. And then I heard they did like a more like making fun of Christian culture movie recently or a few years ago. I don't know. I should watch that. I'm a bit late, so I didn't hear you talk about Hacksaw Ridge. Did you like the film? I did really like the film a lot, and I cried. I thought that it was a well-made movie. My biggest question that I presented was, what's the difference between the main character of Hacksaw Ridge standing by his convictions while being a government employee, and I walked away from it saying, wow, what a hero, and the main character of God's Not Dead 2 being a government employee and standing by her convictions, and I walked away thinking, what a victim. Why did she play the victim? And so I kind of talked about that at the beginning of the stream, like why the reasonings behind that, and I had a few thoughts. I did come to the conclusion that it is different, and a lot of you guys gave me a lot of insight on what you thought about that, and I thought that was really fantastic, and I appreciate that. I wish with all my heart that these questions stayed with the video, you know? I wish that so much so that people watching later could read but I'm trying to read them out loud. Would a remake of Sergeant York be relevant in today's cinema? I think it would be even more relevant, you know? Like Adventures in Odyssey did an episode where they told the story of Sergeant York, and I thought it was really, really well done. You know, a part of me was like, I think it's, you know, I'm not a big fan of like war. Nobody is, but like I'm probably less military. I don't support the military as much as a lot of people who like maybe watch me would, or conservatives tend to. But so I think one thing that turned me off of Sergeant York was it was kind of like, I'm a conscientious objector, and then he kind of at the end of the Odyssey one was like, actually it's wrong for me to be that, and I don't think there is anything wrong with being a conscientious objector. I think that that's an admirable thing, and today it's even more, I guess, relevant to because the wars are so different, like they're so industrialized, and there's so much more to be anti-war for today maybe than there was back then, because at least you could say, oh yeah, Christopher Nolan, good one, yeah, that's a good one. Today you can, back then you could say, well, look at this, look at Hitler, you know. You could justify the self-defense. Now I feel like it's like, well, this isn't self-defense, it's just imperialism, we're just going. But that's for my Who Would Build the Roads podcast. I have a podcast called Who Would Build the Roads. If you guys want to hear me rant about political things, then you can check that out. Me and my friend Josh from Blimey Cow do that, and it's great. I'm a Christian, and people expect me to be a Christian filmmaker, but rarely any of the ideas I get from God are anything to do with Christianity. Yeah, I think that's fine. Like, I put out videos that have nothing to do with Christianity. Sometimes in a Christian review, I barely talk about Christianity. So, I don't know what this whole thing. I think it feels like insecurity sometimes. Whenever people are like, "Well, you got to talk about Jesus. If you don't talk about it, then the blood of the people who watch your Steven Spielberg, yeah, the blood of the people who watch your movies, if you didn't give the gospel in it, is on your hands." And that's untrue. God can use things that aren't even Christian to bring. Like he's doing it. He's got it under control. So do your thing, make your movie, stand by your convictions, but you don't have to be preachy. I don't understand this obsession with watering down and talking down to your audience in Christian movies. Yeah, Steven Spielberg is a great director as well, of course. I have not seen Mom's Night Out, but I've got it. And I was going to actually watch it today, but I decided to watch Flywheel. So I watched 3 movies today. That's what I'm doing while I'm not at work, because I don't have a job right now. I will watch Mom's Night Out, and I think I'm going to do a full review. I'm watching Flywheel, which I feel bad because I'm like watching it and I'm like, drinking game, I think. Great. Now I'm self-conscious. Now I'm embarrassed. What are we talking about now? Flywheel. I'm going to put out a review of that. I feel bad because, like, I'm going to be nicer to that movie because they have such a low budget, but I think it might come across more as sarcastic, so who knows? There's a lot to make fun of with that movie. It's the original Kendrick Brothers film, and they didn't have a budget, barely, so, you know. C.S. Lewis has an essay on the problems with pacifism, but I can't remember the title. Yeah, he talks a little bit in Mere Christianity about pacifism too, and a lot of Mere Christianity is. Was he in World War II, or World War I? It was written after World War II, and obviously that influenced what he had to say a lot. And I know he wasn't for pacifism. So I disagree with him on that. There's some stuff in another chapter where he talks about communion, and I disagree with him a good bit about his views on communion as well. So I don't agree with everything he says. There's very few people that I disagree with, but he's great on theology and apologetics, and I love his approach to his faith, even though I don't agree with everything that he says. So World War I he fought in. That's cool. I mean, good for him, you know. It was a different time. Like I don't know how I would have felt during World War I and World War II. And you've got this very clear-cut monster named Adolf Hitler in World War II, where you're like, okay, this needs to stop. He's coming into our homes and murdering people. Yeah. So what are you gonna do? Mom's Night Out was a little out there. Like each person that I look up to and respect, like I really respect a guy named Tom Woods on politics, but when he gets into religion, I'm like, I'm not really into it. I don't agree with them a lot on religion, but that's fine. Sargon of Akkad, I really agree with on a lot of things. The YouTuber, he says a lot of solid stuff from time to time, but then whenever he gets into like economics or religion, I'm like, well, I don't really agree with that. So I think it's really great to have, Mere Christianity is good. Like I don't agree with everything he says. I think one thing that happens. Oh, what I was gonna say is you can look up to people and not agree with everything that they say. Like someone mentioned earlier, hey, I'm an atheist and I like watching Kevin's reviews, and that's hopefully to be expected, or I hope that that's the case, because you may agree with me on the stuff that I say about like one thing, but then think that I'm an idiot on other stuff. And I probably am on some stuff, but that's why it's a discussion. And I'm glad that Sargon has different views, and I'm glad Tom Woods has different views, and I'm glad that C.S. Lewis has different views than me on those particular subjects. But it's really great to like look through and listen to those different views and say, well, this is somebody that it's good to hear views that you don't agree with from people that you look up to is kind of what I'm getting at, because when you hear that, then you can think, well, I look up to this person. Now I can hear it without having some sort of like bias, like, oh, this person's an idiot. Like you can really genuinely hear it out and then kind of contemplate it. It gets you to think a little more. Thing about C.S. Lewis, Mere Christianity, is he kind of after I read the book by G.K. Chesterton called Orthodoxy. And I realized that Lewis kind of assumes in a lot of ways that you've read that. Even though he doesn't even mention it in the book, he's just kind of like assumes, he glosses over some stuff that Chesterton really like gets into and really focuses on. And Mere Christianity is a very short book. It's not a extremely long book. And so there's some stuff that he glosses over that I think after reading Chesterton, I was like, oh, that's what Lewis was talking about. Because I know that he was inspired by a real book. So after you read Lewis, go ahead and check out Chesterton. I don't agree with everything he says either, but it's a great read. Let's see. Mom's Night Out was a little out there, but I really enjoyed it, and the message wasn't preachy. That's cool. That's what I've been told. I've been told that it's a movie that might inspire me. Are you Calvinist or Arminian? Look, great question. A real polarizing question. Here's the thing. I can't dismiss the fact that, because I know Chesterton wasn't. He was very critical of Calvin and Calvinists and stuff. It's funny because I look at life. I can't discount the fact, if I'm going to believe in a God, he must be in charge of everything, right? Like he must know and be in control of everything. But also, like, from my perspective, I have free will. I mean, if I decide to do this live stream, well, I decided to do it. So I kind of look at everything, at life as kind of a Monopoly game. Not so much the economic aspect of Monopoly, but the fact that when you're playing a board game like that, you know that there's rules. And if someone's there like, hey, you're an idiot. This is just a game, right? Like we're just playing a game. None of this matters. And it's like, we know that. Like we all know that we're just playing a game. So it's not any fun if somebody's just sitting there like telling you it's just the game and like breaking all the rules. And like, I can break all the rules in this because it's just a game. And I'm like, so in the same way, yeah, I think that God probably has everything figured out and he's in control and whatever. But like, from my perspective, as somebody who's in here playing the game, I'm going to play the game as if I'm responsible for my actions and other people are responsible for their actions. So oftentimes when I talk about like politics and stuff, I'm like separating myself from the of course we can all say, well, doesn't matter because, you know, God's got everything figured out. Nothing matters anymore. Blah, blah, blah. I think that there's extremes on both sides. So like if you could take Calvinism to the extreme where you're like, well, nothing matters. It doesn't matter what I do. I just am going to live, sit back, and because God's in control of everything. And then you can take free will to its extreme and do like what people did where they burned people like natives when they came to America in order to get them to convert. Like you look at, well, it's my responsibility because it's all free will. And so, I mean, you see in churches today where they use emotional manipulation, and you know, like play this music and get people to raise your hand and everybody's crying, and then you got like you know, even these movies and where people use like emotional manipulation to try to trick people into becoming Christians, and I don't agree with that. That's where the extreme of free will gets you. So I think that there's some sort of balance in between there that must exist, and that's my answer to the most polarizing question in religion of all time. And on that note, thank you for saying that was good explanation. I've thought about it a lot. I went to a Southern Baptist college, and that was like half the conversations. Who's my favorite Christian singer? Oh, geez. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't listen to a lot of Christian music. Maybe, I guess, Matt Thiessen from Reliant K. On that note, I'm going to go ahead and wish you all farewell. Thank you so much for joining me on this spontaneous live stream. I'll try to do more of these because it's fun. I think my camera's working. This was a blast. I'm using ye old OBS Studios, and this was a great conversation. You guys really helped me think. I might do a short review of Hacksaw Ridge. Now that you guys have given me insight, after seeing it, I was like, I need to have a conversation. I need this, and I'm glad that we got to talk about that. You guys are awesome, and I will talk to you all later. Tomorrow, I think I've got a review of a trailer coming out, so you'll get to see that. All right, peace.